Greetings everyone. We once again welcome all our listeners to the fifth episode of the podcast series by H.O.T Club, VIT Bhopal, where we explore the depths of technology and healthcare and also familiarize ourselves about the exciting journeys of our guests. Today, we will get to know about Mr. Subhankar Pradhan, who is currently working as a software engineer at Medtronic, which is a global healthcare technology leader boldly attacking the most challenging health problems facing humanity and innovations that transform the lives of people. A hearty welcome, sir. Before we begin plumping our brain with knowledge, I would like to know how you feel about our podcast series.
Thank you, Jugal, for inviting me to the podcast. So I feel pretty excited, and I'm pretty much looking forward to share my viewpoints or the
Hmm.
knowledge I've gained in this industry to you guys, so that you guys could decide a better career for yourselves. So I'm feeling excited, and we would be ready to go for the podcast ahead with the
Yeah,
podcast.
sure. Hmm. Now, since you're working at Medtronic, how was your experience on switching from a completely software background to a healthcare kind of background?
So, speaking technically, if you see nowadays, all of our devices are going
Hmm.
smart. So, I did not expect myself to be in a healthcare company at the end of the day. But when I look into it, it's very interesting that most of these healthcare companies are focusing on tech-enabled things like a normal pacemaker, which you would expect to just pump blood through your heart. Right now,
Hmm.
they have pacemakers which are smart, and which would send the data directly to the doctors, to the patients, and give them real-time monitoring. So, seeing that aspect, I was surprised that software people can also work in such deep tech domains
Hmm.
where medical and software are integrating together to make better lives. So overall, it was the only part of the change which I felt was something new for people in the healthcare domain, is that there are stringent bodies like FDA or EU MDR, which will take care that the quality of the device, or there is no malfunction in the device, or there is no harm to the patient from the device, even if it's technology enabled. So overall, it was not a very sudden switch. It was very smooth because software
Hmm.
is involved in healthcare nowadays also. So it was rather an interesting switch, I would say.
Okay, wow, that's really amazing to know about it. While searching about you, we got to know that you are a STEM enthusiastic. So, we would like to really appreciate if you could tell our listeners about it and the further about STEM careers.
So, STEM is nothing but just an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and medicine. So,
Hmm.
I am pretty much into science. I wanted to work at a deep tech company myself, and I in my free time I mostly use up my time doing experiments like making homemade rockets, or maybe just DIYing with some machines or remote control cars or something like that. So I have also been interested in biology, but unfortunately, I haven't taken it up in my 11th,
Yeah.
12th, because I found like it would be overwhelming for me in terms of studies. Uh, so overall, I am interested in all fields of science, including technology, engineering, medicine, physics, biology. So uh, and talking about STEM careers, I would say anyone who's pursuing science, or who is from engineering background, or who is doing their PhD, or doing research as a MSc graduate, or whoever is working in science, they can be called as a STEM enthusiast, or maybe a person working in STEM. So overall, in terms of careers, there's a huge amount of careers in STEM. Not being very specific, their engineering careers are also counted under STEM, but as well as PhD, those who are continuing with PhD and research are also counted under STEM. And there are many things like mathematicians are also counted as under STEM.
Hmm.
So there's a broad spectrum of careers under STEM, if you see.
Okay, cool. Since most of our listeners are from software background here itself, and you have excelled in all three main coding languages, namely Java, C++, and Python. So we would like to know that which one or two languages we can put the most emphasis to make a good career.
So, talking about the languages in the software domain, so if we go for the healthcare domain, there is no specific language to focus on because if you see go for any kind of healthcare device right now in this current scenario, which is tech enabled, you'll have a lot of things going on. There will be data monitoring also, there will be sending of data, there will be some of them might require very specific OSs to work on, small devices, not the full-fledged OS like Windows. So overall, if you see in terms of language, it is not very specific to the, uh, the choice of language is actually very specific to the use case or the field you want to work in. So if we talk about data analysis, so if someone who is choosing to go for data analysis, they would choose something like Python or R or maybe Scala. But
Mm,
let's say if you're someone who wants to work with IoT, then you would go for languages like JavaScript or maybe C++, or maybe there was this language called or maybe if I am not getting the language I remember for IoT, but yeah, let's go for the other ones. Like for mobile application development, you might go with Flutter, Xamarin, or maybe there is Java itself. So overall, talking about the language, there is no such specific to the language. It's rather if you are focused on one single domain, that some domain which interests you, there's a specific language for that. Let's say for cloud computing, there might be C++, or maybe there is Python also. And
mm,
for machine learning, again, there is Python. I myself am more focused on Python, and because it's useful for scripting and mostly C++. But yeah, it's totally specific to your domain. If you want to go for firmware, then again you will learn something like C++ or Java, which are low level languages. But yeah,
mm.
it's totally specific to what you want to choose as a person for learning.
Well, that was very insightful. So, as you must be aware of, the current economic downfall has been a hot topic lately. So, what's your take on it? Like, I'm curious to know, hear your thoughts on the current recession going on, how it is affecting the businesses, and what are your current views on current recession scenarios in most of the companies?
So if you look at recession is mostly something which comes in once in every decade. It came last
Mm,
decade also, but if you see overall, it's just a temporary change in the economy, probably due to the micro and macroeconomics going on in the countries. So talking about recessions, companies are taking a hit. They are probably making some losses due to which they have to cut off employees and maybe cut off some of their workforce. But overall speaking, the scenario in the long term would be positive because after the recession gets over, there will be a lot of hiring and a lot of new things to tackle with, because there will be many problems which would get highlighted due to the recession. So if you are a person who is thinking in the long term of getting a job in a software company, or maybe you want to you want to pursue something in the long term, then you shouldn't be worried by recession if you have knowledge. But if you feel like you just need an internship or something like that, then that might be a difficult case. But there's still hope. There are still companies who are hiring, and especially if you see in the recession proof companies, which include like healthcare, or maybe uh, companies which work on FMCG, which are your household goods, which do not go down even during the recession. So most of these companies will continue with their normal hiring process, but there would be a downfall in the major, companies like, let's say, Microsoft, Google, and all. They might be taking a hit, but it's a temporary hit. It might get over within a year or two.
okay, that's true. So, like, what are some of the potential risks and consequences of a cybersecurity breach in a medical device, and how can you mitigate the risk associated with it?
So, talking about medical devices, here the cybersecurity risks are having higher risk, and are higher as compared to normal, IT companies. So, let's say, for an example, if in a IT company, if you have a breach in their servers, it might just end up damaging the user data, or maybe the servers they're running on. But if you talk about the same for a medical device, here we are talking about risking the patient's life usually. So
Mm,
it's a very big thing to maintain cyber security, like maintain security in the medical devices. So overall, talking about it, the consequences can be very bad, as there have been many news about. If you go for the recent one, there was WannaCry which affected UK's healthcare network, and it was actually a ransomware. But due to that, many patients, data got logged in the hospitals, and many hospitals couldn't proceed with further, let's say, operations, or maybe whatever the course of action they wanted for the patient. They couldn't proceed with for it without the data. So there are also some attacks on personal devices also, like there was some insulin pump where shown at the Black Hat conference, where some hackers tried to give high doses of insulin to people, which could lead to death, instant death mostly. So talking about cyber security, I see it as a very growing. If you, in terms of career, it's very growing. But talking about the risks in the healthcare sector, there is a actual need for cyber security to be uh, kept as an integral part of it, so that we can mitigate the risks. Because the risk reward ratio here is very high for the black hat guys, or who are having malicious thoughts with these devices or
yeah.
programs we are running. And also one more point, like, all these systems are getting smarter day by day, and there is IoT also coming into the picture. So definitely there is a lot more need of security in these
Mm.
ecosystems, especially healthcare ecosystem as a whole.
All thanks to people like you who are making it more secure and safer.
Thank you so much
Mhm.
for
Yeah. So, like working as a product security engineer, what are some of the most interesting, challenging aspects of your job? Like, could you share your personal experience on it?
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
So, in talking about the challenging aspects which I have faced in day-to-day life, so if we talk about devices, nowadays, if you go for medical devices, there is, you know, there is a lot of connectivity being integrated. Like, for example, I have worked on a pacemaker. Now that pacemaker has a Bluetooth connectivity with your phone, where the phone, usually sends the data to our servers,
Mm,
where the server processes the data, and it uses AI ML to track if the user is facing going through some heart attack or something like that. So here, if we talk about, there are many endpoints which are which have to be secured from starting to end, like from the patient to the clinic itself. After the server gets the data, it also sends it to the doctor's tablet, so that they can keep a track of the patients, and
mm,
they can know when the patient is required to have a visit at the hospital or the clinic. So, and even in that, while setting up the pacemaker, there is a requirement for a programmer, so that you can set the parameters of the pacemaker to make sure it is suitable for the patient. So overall, there are a lot of things to take care of, and it's like we have to take care of security from the starting of design to the end of the product in the market. So talking about it, the pen testing we do is the most interesting or the challenging part of the job, because we have to discover many loopholes in the system and
mm,
fix it. Like somewhere, if patient data is getting leaked, or maybe if someone is able to program the device remotely, or someone is able to you know uh, take control of our devices without us knowing. So the most interesting part, if I talk about it, is the pen testing and making sure how can we make it secure. That is the general process which almost all companies follow for making sure that security is present in their ecosystem. And the challenging part, if I talk about it, is that being very regulated as a industry, medical device industry is very regulated. So before launching a device into the market or saying that this device is secure to use or maybe safe for use for patients,
Mm,
so there are these bodies like FDA and EU MDR where we have to talk with them and we have to provide them with sufficient documentation about all the risks our device carry and all the mitigations we have implemented in place, so that after their approval only we can launch the device into the market. Otherwise it's going to be very tough. It's not like you just make up a medical device and publish it and people would buy it. That's not
mm,
allowed actually. Even there's a body which Indian government has for allowing like these specific medical devices or drugs would be allowed for the public to use. They won't go without any rigorous testing. So overall, these are the most interesting and challenging aspects of my job, which I see right now.
okay, true. That definitely requires a lot of perfection. And
Yeah.
in this industry, that's the most important thing, I guess.
Also, it's like we cannot keep the patients at risk, because
Mm,
that would create a bad image for us at the end of the day.
yeah, that
So
should be our number one priority.
correct, correct. So
Mm,
even our number one priority is to keep the patients safe and healthy, rather than
mm,
making devices and just putting up into the market.
mm. So, like when it comes to staying up to date on the cybersecurity and medical industries, what other resources do you find most valuable? And are there any specific sources you would recommend to others who are interested in learning about these topics?
So, coming to the resources, let's talk about them one by one, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll talk about them, like as a whole, cybersecurity and healthcare. So, first of all, going for cybersecurity, there are many resources online, especially, and it's pretty much open source. You have so many guides to go through, what all things are coming up in cybersecurity. There are many articles from Wired, Verge, and then there are platforms like HackerOne, Hack the Box, and there was Hack the Box, and there is Bug Crowd also, where you'll find hacker reports to make sure to know like what is the current scenario in terms of vulnerabilities, or maybe what are the apps which are on most danger, and what all what are the current scenarios in the terms of cybersecurity. And coming to healthcare, in healthcare, the best resource you can go forward is to the main FDA guidelines, which they publish every year, and they also publish articles. And then there are some websites which also publish, like what are the current scenario in healthcare. So overall, if you go for both healthcare and cybersecurity, there is American Hospital Association, which talks about healthcare. Then there are university guidelines also. Then there are, like, especially the ones which work in medical industry. Then there is CISA, which talks about healthcare and public sector cybersecurity. And ATOS is also there, and the National Institute of Health is also there. So these are some good resources to start, gathering information about, if you're willing to know more about health and cybersecurity
Mm.
as a whole, and if you want to work in that field in the future.
Well, that was very insightful. So, when you think about the future of medical sector, especially in India, what do you feel is the most important area for improvement, and why do you think is this the particular aspect so much crucial?
Can you repeat the question once?
Yeah, sure. So, like, when do you think about the future of medical sector? What do you feel is the most important area for improvement, and why do you think it is so much crucial for it?
So, talking about the medical sector, the most important aspect for improving is, making sure that the devices we make elongate the patient lives.
Mm,
It's not like we are just making the devices for the patients to use it for 2 years, and just then after that the device gets useless. The main motive here is to make sure that if they have a life, it's as normal as a human being without the device. So overall, if you see in the medical sector, the future is going to be devices which enable you to function as a normal human, especially in terms of prosthetics, which is a very hot topic going on in terms of tech, where people are willing, people who are disabled, they want to feel like they're normal, and they want to have their limbs working properly. They want to like do activities as a normal human. Similarly, and talking about India specifically, India being a diabetes capital, there are many, people who might require devices like continuous glucose monitors or insulin pumps, or maybe, they require a good amount of, focus on their health. So, talking about that, there is a lot of scope in it. But the thing is, we need, innovative devices which make sure that humans function as a normal without those like how you will function as a normal. It's the same with the device also. You shouldn't feel like there's a device attached with you, or you are just
Hmm.
working or living because of the device. It should be like you're just rather living your normal day-to-day life, and you are able to do anything without restrictions.
Okay, okay. So, like, if a student expresses the interest in pursuing a career as a product security engineer, what advices or strategies would you offer them to help them succeed in this field? Like, based on your experience, what are some of the key skills or attributes someone would require in this role?
So, talking about a security career, if you want to be a product security engineer, the most important skill which you need to have is autodidactic, is being autodidactic. So, autodidactic, as the word suggests, it means like self-taught. Because if you see the security career, most of the things here, they work in an unusual manner. Just for example, if you have a simple login page, a hacker tries to think how how can I bypass the login page. Initial
Hmm.
purpose of the login page to you is to allow the user only if they have a username and a password. But we do it in a manner that we might not even require a username or password, or a dummy username and password, but still we would be able to log into that. So that requires a lot of grit, and overall it requires creative thinking. So if you are a person who wants to get into a security career, you need to be familiar with a lot of technologies. You need to be, you need to know how are the, what are the ways by which we can kind of make machines do what we want. As like, if you see, we have intentions, like it's either a good intention behind the you know uh, s-
Hmm.
um threat or vulnerability we are exploiting, or it's a bad intention behind it. First of all, first and foremost, we need to have a good intention before going hacking someone or something. And it shouldn't be a malicious intent, and it should be an informed decision also. Like, the body should authorize you to like, let's say if I am going and hacking some company tomorrow, the company should have given me authorization to hack them, then only I'd continue with it. Otherwise it does not make any sense to do it unless I'm being a malicious person.
Hmm.
So overall, talking about it, you need to be familiar with a lot of tech. Especially, it could be anything, it could be cloud, firmware. The interesting part of this field is that you have a lot in scope. It's not very specific to just knowing a coding language and going and starting to code, or knowing a single tool and doing things. It's more about how can you find any sort of weakness in the whole system. So it requires you to know anything about the system. It could be anything, literally anything. So to start, like, to get into this career, if you are interested in tech, and especially you want to learn all parts of tech, you can see this as a interesting career. And you can start with resources like I told you. Hack the Box is there, Hacker One
Hmm.
is there, and then there are many resources to start up with. The most common place to start for people in security career is web pen testing, or bug bounties on web. So overall, this is like, this is my overview about if someone wants to pursue a product security career.
Hmm. That was definitely very insightful. So, like the next thing is that can you elaborate the cybersecurity regulations on the medical devices and how their introduction has created a large impact? Like there are authorities, government authorities that bring new regulations every year to ensure the safety of devices for the patients. So, how important are they?
So, talking about cybersecurity, it only became a part of medical devices when the devices became connected. Before that, there
Hmm.
was no existence of this because talking about these devices, most of them were analog or they had to be run manually and being physically present. But given that we are trying to make it smart because there is, a lot of uh, insightful information for the patient and the doctors. So in terms in pursuit of making it smart, we forgot that there are loopholes which can be exploited uh, to use those devices in a malicious manner also. So talking about cybersecurity, it is necessary in medical devices, and the regulations are generally, the major ones are followed by FDA and EU MDR. These they make laws that that govern what measures the organizations must take to protect those devices and customers and their data from cyber threats and breaches. So their regulation also include how the deployment of the device should take place, how customers data should be protected, and who is accountable and responsible for ensuring that there is the devices are secure or the ecosystem is secure. And just in case, how these organizations manage these risks if they hire a third party organization to make sure their devices are kept secure. Also, along with this, incident response is also a very big part of it because just in case, let's say if there is some event which we which goes unnoticed and it comes up later, like let's say some zero day exploit or zero day vulnerability which comes up unnoticed by the people and gets noticed, let's say after 10 days of it being actually published. So in that case, we also need to have well defined bodies to make sure what all devices are to be rolled back and what all steps are to be taken to mitigate the loss of the lives of patient or the loss of any kind of asset we are linking with the medical devices.
Okay, that was really insightful. So, like, coming to the end of the discussion, we would like to know that can you highlight some of the key points according to you which are important and should be known by an IT student?
So, key points. Talking in terms of security. So, the key point is again, if it's kind of a repetition, but talking about the key points, if you want to go into the security domain, you should be well established and you should know very well about the upcoming technologies, and you should be very well versed with tech, and the language you learn would not make any difference unless you are being very specific on the purpose. And so overall, it you can start with the online resources you have, and coming to the software background, there is a lot of scope in the healthcare sector. Not only software, if you can talk about IT in general, software, machine learning, firmware,
Hmm.
Bluetooth, IoT, and there are a lot of fields which are integrating together to make sure these devices work at their best capacity, give humans normal lives, as well as we make sure we are providing the best quality healthcare to the patients. So, like overall, anyone interested in healthcare should will be happy to know that they are contributing to a great cause. And like my just message for the audience is to have the grit to they should just be very curious and have the grit to pursue anything they want in their life. Like they should just
Hmm.
be curious about if they should just be curious in general as a person. They should question why are these things happening. As an engineer also, like their main purpose is just to be very scientifically inclined and curious as a person. and to solve
That
problems.
was that was really like beneficial. So anything else you would like to share with us?
Um, I don't have anything else to share.
Yeah, like tips for the student who will be watching these videos.
Okay, so
Yeah.
talking about any tips or tricks. Uh, so first of all, if you're getting into IT sector, especially, you
Hmm.
should be familiar with coding, at least understanding the code. Even if you are not able to code, that is a bit, I mean, it's you should know how to code, but overall, it's a bit fine if you understand the code itself. You might, be able to join positions like analyst position, or maybe, you might be do it might be able to work in cybersecurity. But going for a software engineer, you definitely need coding as an experience. And overall, do as many internships as possible in your college, in your
Hmm.
learn, take up new projects. Do not, copy them from seniors, because I see, like, if you compare the outside environment, and if you compare the way people work in colleges, it's totally different.
Yeah.
Outside, people would be taking up actual projects and actually be brainstorming on how to solving them, rather than just, taking a copying pasting them. So it really matters when you do something by yourself, rather than taking,
Hmm.
just taking pre-made material and putting it into shape. So overall, yeah, it just, you have to be curious and hardworking in your career, to make sure that it goes well ahead.
Definitely, that's true. So, like, I think we have covered almost everything, and I'm sure that the audience found it extremely beneficial and have noted the points. I personally have. We are obliged to have you, Mr. Shubhankar, for joining us today and providing us such invaluable knowledge. Thanks to the audience for tuning to this episode. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on the socials. We love listening to our listeners, so please reach out in the case of the comments or questions. Thanks again for listening, and we will see you very soon.